All right, welcome back to another Wright Stew podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
And I am Brian Wright, and we've made it to Monday.
Monday. Man, and following up on a pretty eventful Selection Sunday, Brian. Exciting times. Getting to see everybody celebrate. Saw some teams pop in there. Saw some records continue to be broken by some schools and universities, and just a lot of excitement. Brian, any initial reactions, or what was your reaction to some of the bids and the teams, and just the spectacle that is Selection
I,
Sunday?
I think it's really disappointing where the ACC is as a tournament. I mean, as a conference right now. When Wake Forest, the number 4 seed, does not make it, it clearly reinforces the fact that those games in November, October against other tournament opponents really make a huge difference. You alluded to it and said it when we were discussing earlier, but 14 teams from the SEC are virtually in. And I know Texas and maybe at least one more are considered on that play-in game or whatever. But 14 teams of the SEC and the ACC can only get 4. I'd say there has been a changing of the tide of which conference is a basketball conference.
Yeah, definitely a shift in power there, and then Auburn getting the number 1 overall seed for sure kind of cements that as well. So that SEC looking really strong. I mean, that's essentially that's almost a quarter of the bracket is from one conference. I guess it's 68 now, so it's expanded a little bit, but man, it feels like you've got a pretty chance of getting at least a couple teams to the Final Four there, and I mean, rightly so. It's deserved. They're not slouches. We saw what happened. I mean, we did a show on the SEC ACC challenge when the ACC just looked like doormats. So
Yeah, I think the ACC's kind of done it to himself. I think, the SEC slogan that just means more. It kind of feels accurate right now just because they're willing to pay players, pay coaches, pay for facilities, entice players to come there. There's no reasons that for basketball, I understand the football, it takes a lot of money to be able to have a football program. But from a basketball program, you need good coaches. You need to pay the players what they feel like they deserve to get paid. You need to give them a vision for what their life can be post-college basketball at your school. And you need to be able to provide them with opportunities to get better and chase those dreams. And clearly somebody's not able to tell a good enough story to get good players outside of Duke. I mean, UNC got in on the bubble. But it's not a good sign for the ACC when Duke, a good team, can beat you with 2 of their best players, or 2, one clearly their best player and another contributor was out, and still didn't have a ton. There was, Withers had that one play for UNC that changed the game against Duke, but if you can't beat a team that's down their best player and another contributor, that's not a good sign for the balance. Or maybe Duke is just that good. I still wouldn't be surprised. Last year the ACC had 2 teams in the Final Four. I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't happen again. Clemson's really freaking good, dude. Clemson is really, really good.
solid. I mean, Louisville's a strong team. I think they drew an 8 seed, kind of a tough seed for them after making it to the ACC championship game. But I mean, yep, you can only play the people who are in front of you.
Hey, if you're in the tournament, you got a chance.
You're going to have to beat somebody eventually. I mean, NC State showed that last year. If you're in the tournament, you got a chance. We mentioned, a couple other teams, Creighton and San Diego State a couple of years ago, make it to the Final Four. So, I mean, you're in, man. You get hot, you start playing well. Who knows what can happen, right? And again, you eventually have to play the teams in front of you, whether it's the second round, the 5th round, or in the title game. You're going to have to play them. So,
Hey,
really
after watching
times.
that, hey, tell me this. After watching that, did you feel excited about the tournament? Or were you at emotionally connected to this tournament? Do you feel like, all right, I'm into it now? Or what was kind of your emotions watching it?
Yeah, I like seeing it. Was kind of funny because everybody had kind of their staged, hey, what are we going to do when they announce our name? We'll stand up and clap, or we'll do this. And a couple of the schools looked like they had nothing planned, and they were just either one just unbridled sheer energy and joy. Vanderbilt looked like that. High Point University looked like that.
Well, they had a big crowd behind them too, dude.
They
The high school
did.
kids.
They did.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple of others. I mean, like Wisconsin just got beat in their championship game, and they go out and get the their seed and their name called, and they're just like, and I mean, they're coming off a loss in a title game, so that's kind of a, and the cheerleaders are back there bouncing around. It's like, okay, well, that was kind of, I mean, not funny, but kind of funny at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm invested in it. Once it gets going, I'll probably fill out a bracket or two in the next couple of days, and that bracket will be busted within the first like hour and a half of Thursday when they start playing games. So it'll be, um, yeah, man, it'll be exciting. I always get into it once it kind of gets rolling.
Hey, so tell me this: do you have a strategy for picking like teams that you don't really? Are you like dig into like the details, the stats,
I
matchup?
used to. No, I used to when I had a little more time on my hands. Now I may read a couple articles or just skim over a couple of even the experts don't know what they're talking about, man. They'll say stuff and they'll get it wrong, right? So I'll scan over it. I do one of the things I do like to look at though is the pod seating, how far teams have to travel, because I think that matters. Like, Duke is playing in Raleigh, right? I would have picked Duke to win the first two games regardless, but I think some of that matters a little more than people give it credit for. Like Duke has clearly played in Raleigh several times, right, for years and years and years. So they're probably more comfortable in that setting. Um, so I think that kind of stuff. I'll look at some of that as well. Some teams, if you're from Texas and you get put in a Dallas or a Houston pod or whatever, or Oklahoma, somewhere close, and if you're the lower seed, maybe I'll give you a little more credit there because you might have the home crowd behind you, sort of thing. So I'll look at a little bit of that as well to as I'm making my picks. But realistic, I'll read a few articles, skim through it, and then I mean, at that point, it's just kind of a guessing game. Who knows what's going on with anybody? Maybe look for key injuries, make sure everybody's healthy, those sort of things.
Yeah, does it ever come down to mascots? Like if you got a devil versus
Same.
a goat or a demon deacon.
No,
Obviously, Wake Forest. I do feel like Wake Forest got a little bit screwed, fourth in ACC. But do you ever like? Do you think like if we just did a bracket based on which mascot would beat another mascot in like a magical fight? Do you think we would
would
do any worse than
no. I mean, yeah, probably right. Because I mean, if you're gauging it by that, well, I guess Iowa State's not in it this year, but I would take the Cyclones over everybody all the time, right?
But it's magic, right? So maybe
I
there's
don't think
something else.
I don't think
I definitely a Tar Heel wouldn't make it out of the first round, but
I mean, a
Rams.
Tar Heel is essentially a person from North Carolina. I mean, the Tar Heel name based on
But
a,
they
a,
essentially have a sheep as their mascot
yeah,
with
well, like
horns.
a ram, right? Ramsey. Well, I mean, a Tar Heel is a Civil War moniker given to the name of people who fought during the Civil War. They said they fought so hard it was like they had tar on their heels because they stood their ground, right? So
It's kind of funny that never got canceled.
yeah, you think it might, yeah, but yeah, it didn't. But or has it yet? Maybe it's on the way to getting canceled.
I just don't think people know. I knew that at one point in time, but I'd forgotten until you brought it back up. Actually,
Yeah,
what a
yeah,
Tar Heel was. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, a Blue Devil. I mean,
that's pretty vicious.
yeah, a Boilermaker. I don't. I mean, you carry a wrench around probably. A
Probably a
Tiger.
beater.
I mean, Auburn Tigers. I mean, what's Alabama? A Crimson Tide, a Red
They're
Wave.
the elephants, right? They're elephants. They're
Well,
pretty.
they have an
That's their
elephant
mascot.
mascot, but their name is the Crimson Tide. Yeah, so
I think you got to go off a mascot, not just because. Well, Stanford would have never won anything. They
the
got the
tree.
Christmas
Yeah,
tree.
they're
Yeah,
eliminated immediately in every tournament.
but
I
they
don't know.
haven't been great. Their sports have really went down. Stanford, and maybe there's in one of their cycles. But you remember when Harbaugh was there, the football was so good, and they've had good years of basketball and really good
Basketball
years of baseball.
Yeah.
And I feel like their whole sports. I mean, there've been whatever their award is for the best like collegiate sports programs. They have been very competitive in that every year. I can't remember the name of that award.
It used to be the Sears Cup or the Wachovia Cup, or, one of those sort of things. Well, that takes into account as well all the Olympic sports, and I think Stanford offered more. To be fair, right? So you have your traditional, baseball, football, basketball, track, but they were also good at swimming and fencing and golf and all these other sports.
Hey, I got to say something. I saw fencing actually on ESPN Plus. It's a really interesting. It feels like a lonely life to develop that skill, but it's kind of an interesting watch. They had it split screen. They had like two teams. I think it was two California-based teams playing each other, old Pac-12 teams, and
Okay.
it's a really interesting watch to see fencing.
Yeah, I don't know any of the rules. I mean, you're trying to poke somebody with the sword, I guess, and I I don't know.
They
Right.
have rounds, so 3 rounds. They have 3 rounds,
Okay.
and exactly what you said. It's a score based on whether you hit them face, body, and it's great. I don't know how they used to score it back in the day. Clearly, it's sensors on the sticks and the suits that
Yeah.
that match
Oh
up and
yeah.
verify.
No, he didn't get me. He didn't get me. Um, yeah. How do you think you and I would do if you and I faced off in a fencing? I think I've
I
got the
think you would get me, dude. You're really long.
yeah, I've got the
You,
reach on you.
yeah, you would have significant reach.
I think quickness were
And I'll be
probably a
honest with you, my
wash.
arms. My son was noticing like relative. I'm almost like a gremlin. I'm not a gremlin, but like a troll or something. My arms are short relative to my body. I've got short arms relative to my body. My son's arms, obviously, he's still got more to grow, but his are like mid thigh, right?
Those
So
are
a
the
little
monkey
monkey
arms.
ass.
Yeah.
And mine, when I stand up normal, are just like right at my pockets. I think I've started looking at baseball players, and that is not a non-typical. Like a lot of your good hitters are shorter armed guys. Now there's exceptions to those rules.
Keep the
Obviously,
hands in.
Griffey,
Hit that inside pitch.
yeah, you allow everything to work tight. You know, your hands never get too far away from your eyes. So I'm really into a couple of things when I look at athletes. One of them is how they walk, right? What's their gait? And you think about, I can remember being a kid and seeing how Michael Jordan, he had kind of his strut and how he walked. And I remember trying to walk like that because if you walked like that, you'd eventually be that kind of athlete. And then I can remember as I got older, my toes actually pointed out a little bit. I forced them in as I walked, right? Because the good athletes, Jordan was even
Michael
a little
Jordan
bit
was
pigeon
pigeon.
toed.
I was going to ask you about that. So I grew up pretty pigeon toed, and Michael Jordan was pigeon toed. John Elway was pigeon toed.
A lot of great athletes pigeon toed. Mine naturally went out, but I forced them in on my gait. So no, I'm big into how the body works and how biomechanically people are different. And then I'm big into like there's a kid, there's a lot of baseball players that are coming up and you're like, dude, they're not that big. A lot of still 6 foot tall guys that are really good players, but they create a ton of juice. And it's like, how did they do that? Right? Is it just, that kinetic chain that works within their body that's so much different? Is it obliques? Is it just the sequencing of the body is so much better than somebody who's 6'5" and 240? It's just really unique that you can create a lot of force. But yeah, I have been really big into how people, how people look and how their body works when it comes to
Yeah,
athletics.
they're coming off the bus test.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've been wrong. I've been wrong. We were at a middle school
we
baseball.
we have been wrong collectively, Brian, because we've done this at so again, Brian and I coach together our travel team, and yeah, we'll walk on the field and we'll kind of see some kids, and we'll look across the field and see what's going on, and well, look like they got some athletes over there. And then they step in the batter's box and they're terrible. Or we're like, oh man, this kid looks like a goofball. Like, oh gee. And then next thing you know, they're 3 for 3 against us and throwing a shutout. We're like, oh, missed on this kid, right? But
And that's the great thing about baseball. And that just happened to me this past week with games my son was playing. And I saw a kid on the other team. He's probably 5'10", 5'11", maybe eighth grader. I don't know. Good looking kid, though, walking, wide shoulders, good looking gait to him. Until you saw him swing, you're like, this kid's not very good. And then you see him throw, and it's like, dude, how does his body not create more torque? And it's like, dude, he's got an athlete body, but nothing is equating. And again, they're still puppies, right? They're still not fully developed.
yeah,
But it is very odd to see, like, hey, dude, that body, it checks the marks. How does nothing else check the marks? So
Yeah,
anyway,
and that's what a lot of scouts, and it can be frustrating as well because that's what scouts will look for, and coaches will look for projectability. Like, oh, he looks good, right? He's a good looking athlete. Well, he can't hit, and that's one thing.
right.
Well, you and I were literally talking about today. We've got a couple of kids on our team who don't have traditional, kind of baseball bodies, who look a little awkward or a little, different in doing things.
Very
But
effective.
they're hitting the ball. They're
Yeah.
throwing strikes, getting people out. Like and so we are trying to be very conscious about not always having to
Judging a
look.
book by its cover. Yeah.
Yeah, because we see it so much now in baseball, and I saw it in softball. It's like people fall in love with that athlete, or they fall in love with that kind of swagger. And it's like, but they're hitting 220. Is that
Right. Does that matter? Because they wear the little padded glove and they walk with a little pop, does that mean anything? I don't think it does, because they wear sunglasses on their hat and they look the part. I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I'm kind of anti that, right? I think if I was completely in control, like, you wouldn't get swag unless you're hitting a certain average, maybe above 400, and no pads at all, right, on the hands, sliding mitts.
the sliding this?
But you couldn't wear your sunglasses on your hat unless you've already had at least one hit in the game. And you couldn't wear, like, your slide. A lot of these kids like to wear their sliding mitt out to the field, and they've got like a design on their butt. They got a design on their pad. And it's like you couldn't wear that unless you had 2 hits in the game. It stays in the dugout unless you got 2 hits in the game.
Let me ask you this. So I see the
swag.
kids walk up to the plate with their slime in their back pocket, and it sticks out like pretty far. Like it's way out there, right? When I was pitching, if somebody had their back pocket untucked, you know how the pocket would sometimes flail out because
Oh, yeah.
you pulled your batting
yeah.
glove. I would make the umpire. I would make the umpire say, "Hey, have him tuck his pocket in," because if there's an inside pitch and somehow he spins and turns and it hits that pocket, it's a hit by pitch. I don't want to waste a hit by pitch on
a pocket.
And I wasn't throwing behind him, but you know what I'm talking about. If it's a right-handed,
Yeah. You turn
he
in like
turns his hip
to.
in.
Yeah.
Sometimes the pocket just something stupid. If a ball hits an oven mitt, that's not a hit by pitch. It can't be, right?
I think it probably would be considered. Honestly, I don't even think they should be allowed to wear them. I think the first base coach should have the first 3 or 4 pocket mitts. If they're going to be allowed to wear them, which clearly they are, I think it should have to go to the first base coach, and then when he gets to first or gets to wherever, that exchange happens there, opposed to it. Because I think right now, because they are pretty stiff, and so I would say 100% if they get hit, they're going to call that a dead ball.
But it's literally not part of the uniform. So what? And the kids have the towels hanging out of their like.
Oh yeah, that's even dumber. I mean, that's like I want to be a tiger or something. Yeah. I've seen them though. I haven't seen it in middle school baseball yet. I did see it at some showcase events that I went to earlier. Was helping participate in it, or not participate, the coach or whatever. And a lot of towels, a lot of, I guess maybe like you get flood. I don't know. I don't understand that flair, right? It almost feels like The Office, right? I don't know if you remember the movie The Office, right? Wasn't that what it's called?
Office Space.
Office Space. And, the girl's working at like an equivalent to TGI Fridays, and she's got flair, right? She's got buttons on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same deal. Like, look at me. It's almost a peacock, right? Peacocks aren't very strong birds. So they got all these feathers and they can do all these motions so people think they're tough. But the reality is they're just a small little chicken with fancy feathers. And so that's kind of what I think about all the flair.
What's a peacock taste like, you think? Have you ever had one? Can you eat
I have not. I heard recently they're very loud. Like, there was a friend of a friend, let's just say this, friend of a friend who had neighbors who had peacocks. Very loud.
Why would you have peacocks?
I don't know. But let's just say eventually those peacocks somehow got out of their pen, got in the road, and got ran over. And the neighbor no longer had peacocks.
Oh, geez.
And so they ended, and so I don't know. I would be curious. I'd eat a peacock for sure. I don't know what they're,
bird, right?
Yeah. I feel like you could eat them. Something probably eats them.
Yeah. I mean, eventually, yeah. Hey, so going back to the NCAA tournament, a couple things I wanted to mention. So Rick Pitino taking his sixth team, St. John's, to the NCAA tournament. So congratulations, Rick Pitino. That
Great
was pretty
coach. I've
exciting.
heard a lot of his speeches.
Yeah.
Maybe I've sent them to you. He does two things: culture and X's and O's. There's only a handful of those guys. Now they do it for a lot. There's only so many of those coaches out there. I think culture setter and coaching. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Paula.
No, that's great. Yeah, I wanted to hear some of that. Yeah, Rick Pitino, clearly for us growing up was at Kentucky, and was part of the coach and the famous Duke versus Kentucky game from the '92 NCAA tournament. But Rick Pitino, so congratulations, St. John's and Rick Pitino. It's kind of cool seeing St. John's back. I mean, they were a big New York City program growing up in the Big East and the old.
We checked earlier. They haven't really been good since like 2001. So it's
It's been a
literally
while.
been
I think
24 years.
2000 was the last time they made the.
They were decent. You're absolutely. But Rick Pitino, he reminds me of like Dracula or something. Like his skin, like
the widow's peak in the front. Yeah,
he's got a little bit of really pale skin. He's old. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, he's got kind of this old gangster air to him a little bit. And he always has these big players around. I don't know. It just has a little Dracula / gangster vibe to him.
Well, very Italian last name. Yeah, Patino. Yeah, it feels very New York, the whole thing. And yeah, I get it. I get it for sure. A couple other things. University of Kansas has made the NCAA tournament every year since 1990, 35 straight years. And so that spans a couple different coaches for sure. And then Michigan State has made it every year since 1998, and Tom Izzo has been a part of that every year. So just really incredible, man. And Michigan State, I feel like, is a school that never gets mentioned. Like we never hear about Michigan State at all, right? Until they're in the Sweet 16 or Final Four or something. And I feel like they're getting into the tournament and getting bounced in the second round every year is what it feels like.
I think he obviously, both of those coaches, Bill Self. It was obviously Roy Williams before Bill Self. And so both of those programs, after you was asking that, I was like, what do those programs do that just give coaches a path to success, right? I mean, with Kansas, it's been two different coaches, right? But it's just weird that they have such a path to success. There could have easily, after Roy Williams left, fallen off the cliff.
Yep.
They could have easily, as all this money has flowed into the SEC, lost all their kind of relative, top-notch athletes, and they have it from the basketball standpoint. And really the same thing for Michigan State. I mean, I don't know what you're selling up there.
You're Michigan? Yeah, I mean, what's there to do up there? I mean, I don't think we had many people listening from Michigan or Lansing, but I was there in '98 in the Midwest League, and it was fine, nothing great, but cold winters, long winters. Yeah, man, and I think that's part of why the SEC is gaining a lot more because you're getting kids from all over. It's like, oh, it doesn't have to be really cold all the time, and you'll give me some money as well. Ooh, this sounds pretty good.
You'll have the best facilities. We'll take care of you from an academic standpoint. Make sure you have all the best, advisors or tutors or whatever you need. And so that combination of all of it is pretty. It's obviously done good, but it's really interesting for programs that have sustained success. Like you just wonder, like a kid that was born in 2004 or 3 that's playing in the NCAA tournament right now. I don't know. I don't think I would have cared. And I don't think they necessarily care that, somebody won in 1998 or 99 or, before they were born or even 2008. It's just what can you offer me right now? And it's just funny that a program like Kansas and even UNC, even though I hate to say it, and Duke, they have had sustained success over different coaches. And it's just interesting that there's such a path that can be had. Now it's elusive, but there is a path to have sustained success. So you don't know if it's, culture, if it's AD, if it's what is that allows for these programs to have, and everybody's chasing it, but what is it that they have that these other places? Because Kansas, it's a fine institution, but it's not. It gets
It's
cold
Lawrence,
there too.
Kansas. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. The one I was trying to think of a kind of a basketball comp toward, but the first thing that popped in my mind was Florida State football. Like Florida State was under Bobby Bowden was, I mean, that was it, right? That was the tip of the top. That's who everybody was chasing. And they didn't win a national title every year, but they were in the top. Then what is it, like top five finishes for 17 straight years or something
Yeah, and it
crazy?
was something stupid. It was something stupid, and
But
they're really good. Now they
and
fell
pumping
off
out
after he
NFL.
left. Yeah,
And then you look at them now, it's like, oof, wow, they've fallen on some hard times, right? And just can't get the right coach in there. And it doesn't feel like they're ever going to get back to where they were for sure. And again, it just speaks more to who Duke has been, UNC, Michigan State, Kansas, Kentucky's in that group as well. I guess UCLA would be probably the
kind of. But they had their run in the '70s. Obviously,
well,
very
yeah, in the
tough
center,
'70s.
but since then it hasn't been. They've had a couple of runs and good teams and good
Yeah,
players for sure,
yeah.
but it hasn't been that sustained like success for a long, long time. So, really interesting. All right, Brian. So it's Monday, so you know what that means.
I
Athlete.
think you should know. Hey, this is really good, dude. I mean,
So
this was your idea. Sometimes we go back and forth, and I'll agree or disagree, and we'll do whatever. But
Brian's got the final veto power. So today's athlete you
this
should
was
know
really good.
is an athlete named Harold Olson. So Harold Olson was all Big Ten in college basketball. He went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison, but it's not his athletic career. So he was an athlete, but it's not his athletic career that why we're going to talk about him today. So in 1922, he got to be the head coach of Ohio State, and he coached Ohio State in basketball for 24 years. He won 5 Big Ten titles. And then he got on some rules committees and things like this. One of the rules he helped put in place in 1937 was the 10-second rule, where you have to get the ball across half court in under 10 seconds. Help move the game along, kind of kept things going. But his really, really huge contribution, Brian, in 1939, created the first ever NCAA tournament. So it was a tournament where they invited conference winners, kind of from a region. And in 1939, Northwestern in Chicago hosted 8 teams, and Oregon ended up beating Ohio State for the first ever NCAA tournament. So that was in 1939. Um, Harold Olson in 1959 was inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame for his contributions to basketball, certainly. But man, Harold Olson created the NCAA tournament. He wanted to have a national title winner, and the tournament has grown over time. So at the time, there was also the National Invitational Tournament, the NIT, which was a pretty big deal, and kind of remained in competition with the NCAA tournament for several years, right? Even to the point in the '70s where a couple of teams declined invitations to the NCAA tournament to go to the NIT. But the tournament continued to expand. In 1951, they added more at-large bids. In '53, they added 22 total teams. In 1975, they finally said multiple teams from the same conference can go to the tournament because that was turning into a big deal, and especially like big conferences like the ACC, where you had where one year NC State and Maryland were both top five in the nation, but whoever won the ACC tournament was going to the NCAA tournament, and then the other school was going to the NIT. So in 1975, they started allowing more schools to go from the same conference. And then in 1985, opened up to 64 teams, which is kind of where we're at now. They added the other four more recently. But man, Harold Olson, hey, thank you for thinking of that all those years ago. I'm sure there's probably some money behind it is why he was thinking about it, right? And which is kind of what we found where most things how they are initiated.
Hey, so I
We'll
was
lead
just
to, but
reading, and you probably read some of the same things. Like the NIT was the precursor, right? It was the tournament before the NCAA tournament, and it was just weird. The NCAA made rules that if you won your conference, you had to play in the NCAA tournament. And
yeah,
so I know 70s, you said somebody turned it down. If you Google it online, a lot of places say in the 50s, the NCAA tournament kind of overtook the NIT. But it is really interesting that you had kind of a precursor with NIT that got passed, but still exists, right? And even to this day, but is no longer the preeminent tournament that everybody wants to go to.
yeah. Because the NIT, because there was only 8 slots in the NCAA tournament for so long, and so you'd have conference winners, but then you have the rest of the conference who was still some really good teams would go play in this other tournament. And then if it was a conference, so like a great example would have been last year. NC State was not the best team in the ACC by a long shot, but they got hot and won the tournament. Then so now Duke and Carolina and Clemson, they would have not even have been in the tournament. So it's nice that they allow others and have expanded and give more teams a chance, right? And I think I'm all for the regular season meaning something, but at the same time, that's part of the fun of the big tournament.
Hey, I got something for you. Now, if you're a coach, whatever institution, and you have a good year, you're Wake Forest right now. So Wake
Sure.
Forest, had a good year, fourth in the conference. Don't make the NCAA tournament? Do you go play in the NIT?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think as a coach, more games, more reps.
But you're not
Uh,
going to have the same players, probably. I mean, the chances of you having four or five of your contributors back. I mean, maybe I'm being a little pessimistic. I think about it. I would be so bitter. It would be, and you have to turn the page and have some maturity. But I would be so bitter and feel so just like
well,
part of me would
you just
feel
talked
as a
yesterday about how
victim.
you turned the page.
I was getting ready to get there. I would be so bitter. I think I could turn the page, but I'm not sure it helps because you need to be out recruiting. You're able. The transfer portal opens up at the end of this month, like the 24th. During the NCAA tournament, the transfer portal opens for college basketball, and so or the 20. I think it's the 24th of March, and so if you're at that tournament, is that having any impact on your recruiting? I don't know. It would be interesting because you don't really get credit. You can go win the NIT. Do you get any credit? You don't. Nobody says, "Hey, NC State won the NIT tournament in 2000." Who cares, right? So what do
You hang a
you?
banner. Yeah, nobody cares about the NIT at this point. I mean,
I don't disagree with you.
outside of the schools that are playing in it, like if NC State was playing it, you would probably watch the
Oh,
championship
I would.
game.
I would. I mean, they would have to have been better. They were about unwatchable this year, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think as a coach, I would want more reps, more, and maybe it's rather than play, you're probably not playing your seniors, maybe play your freshmen who may come back, right? Or the people that you want to focus on for next year. Maybe allow a player to play in a different position, like just treat it as glorified scrimmages, right?
That would be the right thing to do. I think UNC has turned it down. I also think that it's almost puts your team with a brand that is second tier. I don't really know if it benefits anybody that wins it. I mean, there's probably some data that says, hey, teams that win the NIT the next year they have a better. There may be something out there that says that,
Yeah.
but it really does feel like, from a branding standpoint, it puts you somewhere that you don't want to be, which is an afterthought. But I don't disagree that the more playing you do, generally you get better. But the
Yeah.
truth of the matter is, if you didn't make the NCAA tournament, you probably just need better players. And those players probably aren't on your team at this point. And so I don't know if it helps you.
Yeah. But again, the more you can be on TV, yeah, you get eyes on you. The more tape you can get of your kids, the better off you are. I agree. It does feel second tier, but at the same time, and maybe you're recruiting during like if because the NIT championship game's in New York City, right?
Always. Yeah.
But so hey recruit, we're in New York City. Come hang out in the city and watch us play a little ball, and that's a pretty compelling trip, right? That's pretty exciting.
I don't know. I don't know because they're going to Kansas or they're going to one of the 14 teams from the SEC that's playing in the NCAA tournament, and that energy is just different, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't. I just don't know if it really helps you though. I mean,
Yeah.
part of my initial reaction is I'd be bitter and I would go play. I'd figure out how to turn the page. But now even as I think about it from a more logical standpoint, I don't know if it actually helps you from any standpoint because you're not. You know, I don't know. It's not a decision I'll ever have to make, but I do understand the
Well,
people, the brands that turn it down.
let me compare it to something that happens to us occasionally. We lose our first bracket game, and we've got to play a consolation game.
I feel like it's different. Our kids, we are trying to develop. Right.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what college basketball does anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just too much money. From a developmental standpoint, I'm 100%. Many of you have argued with other people, other coaches, to be like, they don't want to play. It's like, dude, that's why we're here. We paid the money. Even though we lost, who cares about the ring? Let's get more reps in. And me and you are 100% on board with that together. But on the flip side with this, it feels different. Now, I feel like a lot of the teams that we play against treat it like they got invited to the NIT. Like, well, it doesn't matter. We can't win our plastic ring. Let's just go to the house.
Yeah.
So and so's uncle died 14 years ago. Let's on this day, so we got to remember that. And so there's a little inside baseball story for Paul and I there. But anyway, it's but the flip side is I feel like we are very much about development of our team. I'm not sure if that's the same with college basketball at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I agree. It's a different time for sure. So, man, all right. So exciting times. They fill out those brackets. Make sure you're watching all the shows and doing all the research, and it's just so you can have your bracket crushed on day one. And then tomorrow's the big one, opening day tomorrow. We're excited for that. We'll be bringing more opening day talk tomorrow for tomorrow's episode. But hey, we appreciate you listening to today. Make it a great sports day.
Out, go pack.